So this is GTM number 411. I've been working on it since October 28th, and you know, starting to come together a little bit. This weekend I was working on the steering, which my donor had telescopic steering, which you know, I'm not sure if I'm going to need telescopic steering, but if I do, great. If not, it's a lot of added work, that's for sure. You know, a lot of these parts in here had to be modified. So you can see I've got big stack of washers underneath the bracket here, and the reason for that is to get this right in here to line up with the post and use the existing factory 5 bracket on the frame. To get all that stuff to line up, you've got to drop the column by about that much. So I don't think I'm going to leave the washers in there. I think I'm going to make an machine an aluminum spacer, drill some holes in it, and that should be a little bit cleaner than that. Not real fond of the washers. And then also on the telescopic steering, you can see the slots that Factory 5 gives you. Well, they're not quite in the right spot, so I widened out the slot, and then I think I'll make a plate to go underneath here with just holes in it, and that should help clean that up a little bit. But seems to work pretty well. I put a square drive. There's just a square cable that goes in here, and I had this unplugged and put a square drive screwdriver in there and just turned it, and everything moves pretty freely. So I went ahead and used some of the rivet nuts they give you in the kit to mount a couple in the frame there to end up mounting the motor for the drive. And then they got a couple of they got a universal here that mounts. You know, this can move a little bit. This bearing block here has to get mounted somewhere, so I've got to figure that out. They don't give you much for that, but I think I'll probably run a bar across, maybe across here is what I'm thinking, and then machine a piece to drop down here at going on. One other thing that's a little bit of a problem is if you look at the column, you can actually take the steering wheel and jiggle it, and you can see the hole. I don't know if you can see that on the screen, but this piece here moves, so I think I'm gonna machine a donut to go here and then mount a piece of steel off the frame to come down and support this. This is the original plastic bushing that came out of the steering column from in here. Getting apart the stock steering column was a little bit of a challenge too. At first I'd only cut through the first layer of steel, not realizing there's a second layer there you gotta cut through. And it's not too bad if you're careful. You know, the bushing is the bushing that's under there protects you from going into this chrome piece here, this chrome plated piece that slides back and forth. So there's a long plastic sleeve that comes all the way out, and then I cut the sleeve off and shoved part of it back inside there. And then I don't know if you can see here, but I kind of peened over the metal to hold the plastic bushing in there. Hindsight now, might have been better to just leave it long and then mount my bracket here, but I didn't know I was going to need that. So you know, just about everything here went pretty smooth. You know, the cutting of the 3/4 DD shaft that goes in, there's a 1 7/8" piece that goes in here per the manual. First time I did it I screwed it up a little bit, but I ended up using another piece of the DD shaft. So when I did that, I just left, because you use the second half of the DD over on this end going in the other end of the universal joint, and So this ended up being, this piece here ended up, this 3/4 DD ended up being a little shorter, but I just left this female DD a little longer, and then you can see that's where I pinned it and peened it over to hold the pin in. So, but overall, I think we're getting pretty close on the telescopic steering, you know. I got the pedal box in there, and I'm going to do the master cylinders, I think, coming up here pretty soon. You can see the some of the aluminum here is kind of a black crinkle powder coat finish. And you know, these are all my donor parts that were cleaned up. This is just basically a bunch of elbow grease. Scotch-Brite and WD-40 cleaned up all these parts. They didn't look anything like that when I started. And and then I had the stock rotors sandblasted, and I painted them, and then I removed the paint from the braking surface, so that ended up looking, well, it looks pretty good. It's not as good looking as the slotted and drilled rotors, but these rotors are in good shape and they don't cost anything. So you can see I did mill off the Corvette name before I had the calipers powder coated, so that looks kind of nice. And yeah, I got the right now all the aluminum for the foot boxes is out getting powder coated. I'm only powder coating the pieces that you're going to see when the hood's open or you look into the wheel well, so you can see that these couple of driver's side foot box pieces are permanently mounted in there with rivets, and I'm using some this is from Breeze Automotive Bostik 1100. Seems to be a pretty good polyurethane adhesive, a little bit better than using the silicone. But the only negative to this for me with these panels is my panels are black, and this is gray, so when it squeezes out, it you know, you can see it, and I've had to touch it up in a few spots. You can see back over here, you can't tell that there was some gray there, but I touched it up with some black paint so you can't see it. But so yeah, I've got you know, my rivet nuts in for my AC. That was getting all that lined up, making sure there was clearance around the AC unit. That was a little bit tricky, and took a little time. Also making sure that when it had clearance all the way around, that Shane or V-Raptor Speedworks, his plenum, so we can put the fan inside the car. Making sure all that stuff lined up. That was a lot of trimming and just you know, fiddling around. So, but I think it's going to be pretty good. Yeah, so I'm going to do my brake master cylinders, which they're sitting over here on the table. I gotta cut these off before I can put them in. And then there's the overflow pieces, and then we're going to get closer and closer to dropping the motor in here. You can see I've got some of the aluminum pieces under the car. And there's my motor out of my donor. So that is a bone stock LS1, nothing too fancy. You know, the car only weighs 2,500 pounds, so I think power to weight on it is just shy of the current Z06, which is 500 horse, so at least horsepower per pound, so should be alright. And then there's a transmission that I picked up from a guy who was looking at building the car, and he decided after he had gotten everything but the kit that he wasn't going to do it. So that's a G5003 that's I cleaned that up too. Once again, the old Scotch-Brite and WD-40, and I bought that from him, as well as the Kooks exhaust that's on the engine sitting up there, and a few parts that he had acquired from Shane on a V-Raptor. And then I think there's a skid kit sitting over here. Yeah, skid kit and a few other things, but you know, can see a few of the other parts here that are slated to go on, and some nuts and bolts from the donor that I've kept around, and then a few pieces on the floor from the donor that I never sold. My donor came out pretty good. I think I bought the donor, paid it off, made a few bucks, and kept my engine and all the parts I needed for my GTM. So pretty excited about that. But anyway, yeah, it's coming along. It's looking pretty good. I think this week I'm going to try to get that steering finished up with some bearings and making that bearing block up there and try to get that tidied up, make my plate, and maybe get my master cylinders in, and then yeah, a few other things. So should be good.